We've talked a lot about the public advocate race that's taking place in New York City. By the time you see this video, it will be the day that residents of New York City cast their votes, so be sure to go out and vote for Nomiki Konst. And this has been a really fascinating race for a number of reasons, but one thing that's clear is that the establishment, not just in New York City, but the establishment nationally, is terrified of Nomiki Konst, and really they should be, because Nomiki Konst is someone who is a true progressive. She's fighting for the people, and she's a grassroots funded candidate. And the reason why the establishment is so terrified of Nomiki Konst is because in a very crowded field with multiple people vying to be New York City's public advocate, she managed to outraise all of them. All from small dollar donors from across the country who want the policies that she'd be able to push for in New York City replicated perhaps in their state. So they believe in what she's talking about. This isn't just about New York City, in my opinion. This is about the progressive agenda being implemented nationally, but albeit, in different local areas of the country. So this is an incredibly fascinating race, but it's clear that they're afraid of her. So if you're afraid of a candidate, if you see that she's picking up steam and she's putting forward a message that resonates with people, what do? Well, like the establishment always does, they're opting to smear her. And that's exactly what Politico decided to do, where they published a hit piece on her that is probably one of the most shameless and embarrassing hit pieces I've ever read, because they just go through everything. Her personal life, her work life, professional life, where she went to college, and they basically try to throw everything at the wall, or more specifically, they try to throw everything at Nomiki Konst in order to see what would stick. And the whole goal of this article was clearly to portray her as a wishy-washy person who you should suspect maybe isn't being truthful about herself. But the irony is that this article isn't being truthful, because Nomiki's campaign went through this article with a fine-tooth comb, and they reported 48 factual inaccuracies here. 48 in this article, which is unbelievable. Now, part of the problem is that Nomiki Konst was not able to finish a long questionnaire that they submitted. So Politico wanted to do an interview with Nomiki Konst, but they gave her a questionnaire that was long and lengthy just days before the election. So they filled out what they could, submitted the questions they were able to answer, and they said, look, we're not going to be able to make this really stringent timeline that you're putting forward. We have an election to run, and this isn't like other campaigns. Like, they're knocking on doors. You know what I mean? They're actually out there on the streets and in the field. So they can't take the time to just have all of the grassroots, staffers get out and get the word out. Nomiki is out herself. So they made it very clear, we don't have time. So whatever they couldn't get answered from Nomiki Konst, they tried to portray it as her declining to answer the questions when they tried to emphasize that they don't have time. In fact, they quoted her campaign manager, Dominique, in this article, where she said, we can't meet this deadline that you're imposing on us. And they also basically, any blanks that they couldn't fill in, they tried to portray that as suspect. And there's so much in this article, in this hit piece, that I can't possibly cover everything, but here's a couple of examples to just kind of demonstrate how disingenuous this article is. So it's titled, Who is Nomiki Konst? And it's written by Dana Rubenstein and Laura Namias. And they're not just trying to communicate implicitly that Nomiki Konst is wishy-washy, because they state overtly here, quote, in the event she's elected, Konst would not be the first public advocate to struggle with accuracy. And they contend that she, quote, declined to answer many of the questions. Now, by saying, well, she's not the first public advocate to struggle with accuracy, they're trying to portray themselves as fair, but they're omitting very specific details that should make them suspect, not Nomiki. Now, to give you an example of that, I think the most brazen example is they take issue with Nomiki Konst and her complaining about the debate moderator threatening to cut off her mic. So here's a clip of that.
You, Mr. Blake.
Do I have a right to rebuttal?
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. And if you keep interrupting, we'll turn off the mic. Please don't do that, okay?
So you see very clearly there that Nomiki Konst asked for a rebuttal, and then the moderator says, no, and I'll cut your mic. Now, Nomiki Konst was right to complain, not just because I think he was overly rude, but because there's a conflict of interest that Politico refused to acknowledge. So first of all, that same individual who threatened to cut her mic, well, the problem with him hosting the debate is that Nomiki Konst, running for public advocate, was very clearly against Amazon's deal in New York City. But that individual must have had it out for Nomiki. I have no other reason to believe otherwise, because he supports it vocally. Not only has he tweeted out support for the Amazon deal, but he also said this about the Amazon deal on air recently.
The collapse of the Amazon headquarters deal will stand alongside other famous projects killed by a relatively small group of activists. It is the latest example of New York living out the old expression, "Don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good."
So now you kind of have some context here for that specific instance where Nomiki Konst was complaining. This is kind of a problem. Maybe this guy has it out for me because I'm against the Amazon deal. He's for it, and he's moderating the debate, and he's clearly not being fair to me. So you have the details, right? So how do you think Politico frames this entire debacle? Well, they try to portray Nomiki as the bad guy. So this is what they say, quote, "She aggressively attacked the other candidates, accusing them of taking donations from real estate developers. She even suggested that NY1 moderator Errol Lewis, who threatened to cut her mic after interrupting other candidates, was trying to, quote, silence women." So they make no mention of the real crux of the issue here, that this is someone who is in favor of the Amazon deal, and he is moderating a debate where one of the public advocate candidates, Nomiki Konst, is against the Amazon deal. So maybe he's being extra harsh to her, specifically because he doesn't want her to win because he supported the Amazon deal. So, I mean, that's basically what Nomiki Konst was saying in calling out his bias, but they don't even mention that in this article. They just say, oh, well, Nomiki Konst was attacking her opponents. Okay, but are you not going to mention the bias there? So they make no mention of that moderator's bias, but they do, however, bring up Nomiki Konst's bias and her credibility as a journalist, saying, as a reporter for the Young Turks, Konst sometimes interviewed politicians whose campaigns she publicly supported or activists whose political positions she openly agreed with, but Konst sees no dissonance between her political activism and her journalism. Stop and just consider how ridiculous this is. According to these authors in this Politico hit piece, if you are interviewing a candidate who you publicly support and you disclose that, that's a problem. But if you are moderating a debate and you don't disclose that you openly are against one of the policies that is being pushed by one of the candidates, no problem there. In fact, it's such a non-issue that we're not even going to mention it. And understand here the problem with this. I actually do this as well. I interview people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Amy Valletta, who I actually support. But the thing that's important is that I actually disclose that. My viewers know exactly where I stand. I lay out all of my preferences, and they know that I'm interviewing this individual, candidate X, with the intent of helping them. I'm disclosing that information. But at the same time, what's most important is not false neutrality, it's objectivity. So if Nomiki Konst or myself are interviewing candidates we support in an effort to help them get elected, what matters is that we're not pretending to be neutral, like that host was doing, but they didn't have a problem with him doing it. They didn't have a problem with him being unfair to Nomiki Konst, threatening to cut off her mic when she wanted to rebut one of the claims made about her. And they don't even care that he was publicly saying how much he supported the Amazon deal. So maybe going into that moderation gig, he should have disclosed the fact that he supported the Amazon deal. But they don't find a problem with that. And that's not the only area where you will see that this is a hit piece. Let's go through some others, because the rest of it just oozes contempt from the authors of Nomiki Konst. So when it comes to Standing Rock, they tried to make it seem as if her reporting at the time when she was at Standing Rock was disingenuous. Quote, while working for the Young Turks, she says she was bombed in the Dakotas amid protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline. I was at Standing Rock in the water when there were like bombs being thrown at us, literally, where a woman got her arm ripped off and she still is paralyzed in one arm, she said, in possible reference to protester Sofia Wilansky, whose arm was damaged by shrapnel of indeterminate origin. to say that her arm was damaged due to an indeterminate origin, you're being a liar. You're being disingenuous. So you may not be able to point out the specific cop who was actually responsible for firing the shot that hurt her, the rubber bullets, whatever it may be. I don't know what it was. But to say that it was from an indeterminate origin is just disgusting, in my opinion. And second of all, to suggest that Nomiki Konst was trying to be hyperbolic here when she described it as basically bombs being thrown. It was like a war zone. If you watched any of the reports, I was watching Jordan Sheridan's reporting, Nomiki Konst reporting at the time, and I was basing my opinion off of what they were saying on the ground. You could tell that Standing Rock was in fact like a war zone because there were militarized police officers that were brutalizing protesters. They were spraying protesters with cold water in freezing weather. So they're trying to downplay what happened at Standing Rock in an effort to discredit Nomiki Konst. It's just disgusting. No, another weird thing that they included here is, quote, Konst says she attended the University of Arizona but declined to say if she graduated. Inquiries to the university were not returned. I.e., she probably just didn't get to this question and left it out, but they're trying to raise doubt that, well, you know, she says she went to this university, but, I mean, did she even get a degree here? Who cares? You're not even talking about the issues here. And I get that this is a Who is Nomiki Konst piece, but if you don't have the info, then you don't report on it. Why would you even include that? I mean, it's clear that they don't like Nomiki Konst, and they are trying to prime you to believe that she's someone who can't be trusted. Another thing they said here, they basically downplayed her achievements. Quote, she describes herself on her campaign website as an award-winning investigative journalist. Asked to specify, her campaign said she participated in a citizen union panel entitled Recognizing New York Journalists Who Make Democracy Work, after which she and other panelists were awarded glass apples with their names on it. So, I mean, what they're doing here is basically scoffing at the award, trying to say, oh, well, this is basically a participation trophy that she received. All the panelists got glass apples. I mean, how smug and elitist of them. They're trying to find anything. Again, like I wasn't joking when I said they were trying to throw whatever they could at Nomiki Konst in hopes of finding out what would stick, because, I mean, let's get to the last line here. So it's pretty ironic. They say much of the rest of her life remains occluded by imprecision, except your article is imprecise, because if their campaign has to come out afterwards and say, look, there are 48 inaccuracies here, then you need to just not write this article. They were just dead set on writing this article and were hoping that Nomiki Konst would fill in the blanks for them, but you didn't give her a long enough timeline. And I get it that people will push back and say, well, of course Nomiki is going to say that. But other people who were referenced in this article as allies of Nomiki Konst, like Josh Fox, even he said, yeah, this article was awful. He said, quote, Politico's incoherent hit job on Nomiki Konst gets many things just flat wrong, not just about her, but about me. But I was with her at Standing Rock under fire. This is so typical. They've been attacking Bernie peeps like crazy, and they are willfully obscuring her record and her accomplishments. That's bad journalism, yellow journalism. It's shameful. We must stand up for ordinary New Yorkers and vote for Nomiki Konst on Tuesday. And Politico call me and report on all the stuff you left out. Yeah, and that's exactly it. You know, it's not just about Nomiki Konst and trying to defeat her in this public advocate race, but it's anyone who's a progressive, anyone who's tied to Bernie Sanders, because she was a surrogate for Bernie back in 2016. She is someone who he put on the DNC Unity Reform Commission to reform the DNC. So she's a true progressive. She's a strong progressive. So reading this article, I actually felt really bad for her, because here she is. She's dedicating her time to try to run to be the public advocate of New York City because she is believing in these things that she's talking about. She wants to make a difference, and Politico comes along, just releases this hatchet job on her. I mean, I would be embarrassed to put this out. It's embarrassing. So I will leave you with this ad and let Nomiki Konst make the case for herself, because if you have tuned into this show or any other progressive media outlet, you know what Nomiki Konst stands for and you know who she is. She's not wishy-washy. She's someone who is a fighter for the progressive movement, and it's not just that she's fighting for people in New York City, but what she's doing is a microcosm of what we want to accomplish across the country. So I'll leave you with Nomiki Konst. I think this is the last ad that she created, but please, if you live there, vote for Nomiki Konst.
New York lawmakers have let us down. The same elected officials, taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from real estate developers, now want to be watchdogs over them. We need lower rents. We need higher wages. We need an actual watchdog. I'm an investigative reporter. I've exposed powerful interests, and as your public advocate, I'll take on abuses by developers and their influence over government. I'm Nomiki Konst. I approve this message, and I'm asking for your vote.
You could support the Humanist Report at patreon.com/Humanist Report. But trust me, I'd have way more supporters on Patreon if that was my podcast. Sad.